Somewhere deep in Ukraine, something eerie is happening. Russia's soldiers know it. They've seen it time and time again. As soon as any of their comrades set foot in this one place, they know that the soldier they've just seen enter is on a countdown. They have 12 minutes, just 720 seconds in this terrifying place before the inevitable happens, death. Russia's soldiers aren't even lasting as long as mayflies in Ukraine right now, as they have 12 minutes and counting as soon as they enter this one place. What is that place? Stepnohirsk. Lying a short distance from the banks of the Kinska River and surrounded by the settlements of Lukyanivske and Primorske, Stepnohirsk has become a death trap for Russia's soldiers. But it's a trap that Putin keeps on forcing them to enter. Russia's leader has to do that because he sees Stepnohirsk as one of the key pieces of territory that Russia must capture if it is to advance north, over the Kinska River, and in the direction of Zaporizhzhia city. This tiny settlement, which is war-ravaged already, is desolate. No non-combatants remain, only Russian soldiers who creep through the streets, knowing that each step they take forward could be their last. Ukraine's drones are always watching. The country's soldiers lie in ambush, shifting their positions based on what the drones see until they're in the place to strike. This is the reality of Stepnohirsk for Russia's soldiers. And as one Ukrainian soldier, who goes by the call sign 9, tells the Times, I reckon the life expectancy of one mobilized Russian here is about 12 minutes, no more. And the cost of his life, in terms of shells and FPVs spent to kill him, is about $5,000, $6,000. Let's transplant ourselves into the head of a Russian soldier sent into Stepnohirsk, after trudging for miles through a kill zone just to get here. And we'll get to that later in the video. You enter the once peaceful settlement. Before the war, this would have been a nice place to live. At the center of Stepnohirsk are 9 high-rise buildings, and they're surrounded by cottages. A sleepy village of 5,000 sounds idyllic, but that's not what you're seeing as you cross the threshold into the settlement. All 9 of those high-rise buildings have been bombed into oblivion. The gorgeous cottages are scorched, and there is no sign of any of the 5,000 people who used to live here. All that remains is an eerie sort of calm, a silence that anybody who has ever been caught in the eye of a hurricane knows is a surefire signal of danger. No birds are chirping, no signs of life anywhere. A shiver runs down your spine, but you know you have to push on. Putin demands it. Suddenly, a sound breaks the silence. The telltale whir of a reconnaissance drone lurking overhead forces you to make a desperate break for whatever scant cover you can find. Just 5 minutes after entering Stepnohirsk, you find yourself hiding behind a wall and the burnt-out remains of a cottage, praying to whatever deity you believe in that you were quick enough to evade Ukraine's drone. You weren't. You just don't know it yet. In a hidden command center, Ukraine's drone operators are already preparing for the delivery of your death. The footage shot by the reconnaissance drone that flew over your head is being beamed back in real time, and you have become nothing more than a blot of heat on a thermal imaging camera. Ukraine's defending forces know exactly where you are, and it will take no more than a few minutes for the whir of the reconnaissance drone to be replaced by that of an FPV strike drone. You hunker down. Each passing minute feels like an hour. Finally, after another 5 minutes have passed, you think that you're safe to move. Wow, just 10 minutes in, and you've just had the closest of close calls. Well, not quite. As you peek your head over the wall that you believe is your sanctuary, a Ukrainian drone is closing in. It is behind you, but you don't even think to look as you scan the Stepnohirsk streets looking for your next route of advance. By the time you hear the buzzing, it's too late. The drone scores a direct hit, and your light is shut off. You lasted 12 minutes, and Stepnohirsk returns to the eerie silence you once knew, waiting for the next unfortunate Russian soul to enter. This is the fate of so many of the soldiers who enter this new village of death, and for many, it's inevitable. Right now, still maintains control over Stepnohirsk. Ukraine has all of the advantages when combating Russia's assault troops. As Ukreform noted in a January 14th report, where it covered how Russia has been trying to advance into the village. Stepnohirsk is located on high ground. For Russia, that makes the village strategically important, as we're going to explain in more detail in just a few minutes. But right now, that high ground is working toward Ukraine's favor. Positioning its drone and artillery operators on the hills gives Ukraine's forces a clear view of the village and the surrounding areas. High ground also makes it easier for drone operators to fly their reconnaissance and FPV drones, not least because the better signals provided by this type of territory Allow those drones to search deeper into the city for any Russian soldier who is stupid enough to enter. In its own analysis, Combat Veteran News adds that water is another issue that Russia's soldiers face. Stepnohirsk, which is about 30 kilometers, or about 18.6 miles, away from Zaporizhzhia city, combines its high ground with deep lows. It is in a geographically very difficult location, Combat Veteran News says, because this whole region here is partially flooded, and that means no one can really occupy any region here. So, while Ukraine holds the high ground over Stepnohirsk, Russia's forces have to trudge through flooded terrain in freezing cold weather, all in service of achieving nothing more than their own deaths within an average of 12 minutes of entering the village. We have to ask the obvious question, why? We've touched on one of the reasons already, which is that Russia is making a push towards Zaporizhzhia city. Or, at least, it wants to make that push. Standing in Russia's way is the Kinska River that we mentioned earlier, which will need to be crossed. And for that crossing to happen, Russia needs to take as much territory as it can south of that river so it can establish safe locations for its soldiers to push north. Enter Stepnohirsk, which, along with Primorsk and Lukyanovsk, would give Russia the safe space it needs to attempt the Kinska River crossings that bring it closer to Zaporizhzhia city. It's the importance of this particular city that has led to Putin ordering 20,000 soldiers in the direction of Stepnohirsk. By taking the village, Russia gains the high ground that we mentioned earlier, along with a route toward a city that is the home to the largest steelworks that Ukraine still has active. Losing Zaporizhzhia would be devastating to Ukraine's military, as Mongol, who is a senior officer who commands the Farada Group, which is a special forces unit inside Ukraine's military intelligence, tells The Times. The loss of Stepnohirsk would allow the enemy to overcome the natural barrier, advance artillery and unmanned assets, and shell Zaporizhzhia round the clock. Mongol says, adding, that would cause panic among the civilian population and a humanitarian crisis. It would create the conditions for the occupation of Zaporizhzhia and the loss of the regional center. That mention of artillery has also been pointed out by Combat Veteran News and Ukrinform. While Russia wants to cross the Kinska River, Stepnohirsk is also located just close enough to Zaporizhzhia city to allow Russia's artillery units to begin their shelling before the crossings happen. At the very least, Russia could start shelling the outskirts of the city to set the stage for an attempted occupation, Combat Veteran News says. And again, remember the high ground in and around Stepnohirsk. That's the ideal territory for Russia's drone and artillery crews to set up so they can start bombarding Zaporizhzhia city. And, as Ukrinform points out, control over Stepnohirsk would also give Russia the ability to control the logistical routes that lead from Zaporizhzhia and into settlements like Huliopoli and Orikhiv. Mongol also makes mention of Russia wanting to panic civilians. That's another key reason why it's happily sacrificing soldiers to the Stepnohirsk grinder. But before we explore that point, this is a military show, and we bring you the full picture, not just the headlines. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you want to stay ahead of the curve. Russia's campaign against Ukraine's civilians isn't a byproduct of its invasion of Ukraine. It's a key strategy, and it's one that Putin has employed to kill 15,172 Ukraine civilians, along with injuring 41,378 more. Up to January 31st, the shelling of cities that are filled with non-combatants has also been a key part of Russia's strategy, as we have seen all throughout the occupied regions of Ukraine. And, as the New Voice of Ukraine reported on February 23, Russia has been building on its civilian-focused strategy in 2026. Beyond trying to destroy as much of Ukraine's energy infrastructure as it can, using drone strikes that have been ongoing throughout the winter, Russia is now using a combination of sabotage and assassinations to create panic inside Ukraine's cities. The energy grid strike campaign is being shifted to focus on Ukraine's civilian railway infrastructure and supply routes, the New Voice of Ukraine says, and now, Russia is sending assassins into Ukraine cities to actively hunt regional leaders, as we saw with Operation Enigma 2.0, which targeted journalists, public figures, and even key members of Ukraine's intelligence community, such as HUR Representative Andriy Yusov. So for Russia, Stepnohirsk is a vital stepping stone. It could lead to the capture of Zaporizhzhia city, and even if it doesn't, it allows Putin to continue his barbaric and terroristic campaign against Ukraine's civilians. These dual goals are what are leading Russia into making the often suicidal choice to send its soldiers to run the 12-minute gauntlet of great death in Stepnohirsk,